Ethan Carter wiped the sweat from his forehead as he tightened the last bolt on an old pickup truck. The midday sun blazed down on the small, weathered garage tucked at the edge of Maplewood, a sleepy town where nothing much ever happened. The sign above the garage read, "Carter's Auto Repair," in faded letters, a relic of better days when Ethan's father had run the place with pride. Now, it was all Ethan could do to keep the business alive. His hands were calloused, his jeans stained with oil, and his dreams often felt as worn out as the cars he worked on. Despite the struggles, Ethan loved what he did. There was something satisfying about taking a broken-down vehicle and breathing new life into it. To him, fixing cars wasn't just a job. It was like solving puzzles or piecing together fragments of someone's story. Every car that rolled into his garage carried its own tale. The single mom whose car broke down on her way to work, the elderly man who refused to part with his vintage sedan, or the teenager saving up for months to afford repairs on his first car. Ethan listened to their stories, offered advice, and charged only what they could afford. He didn't have much himself, but he believed everyone deserved a little kindness. The garage hadn't always been this quiet. When Ethan's dad was alive, it buzzed with activity, mechanics chatting, tools clinking, engines roaring back to life. But after his father passed away unexpectedly, Ethan found himself alone, trying to hold everything together. Bills piled up faster than he could pay them, and some days he wondered if closing the garage would be the smartest choice. Yet every time he thought about giving up, he remembered how proud his dad had been of their work. That memory kept him going, even when things felt impossible. On slow days, Ethan sat on a rickety stool near the entrance, watching the road stretch out beyond the garage. Cars zoomed past, heading somewhere important, or maybe nowhere at all. Sometimes, travelers pulled over with smoking engines or flat tires, thankful to find help in such an out-of-the-way spot. Ethan welcomed these moments. They reminded him that the world outside Maplewood still existed, even if he rarely ventured beyond its borders. Romance was the furthest thing from Ethan's mind. Between long hours at the garage and worrying about finances, he barely had time to think about dating. Besides, most people in town saw him as the hard-working mechanic, not exactly boyfriend material. Ethan didn't mind, though. He figured love would come along eventually, or maybe it wouldn't. Either way, he told himself he was content. But deep down, there was a part of Ethan that longed for more. A connection, a spark, someone who understood him beyond the grease-stained apron and the weight of responsibility he carried daily. Little did he know, fate had plans in store that would change everything. For now, though, Ethan focused on the present, tightening another bolt and humming an old tune his dad used to sing. Life might be tough, but as long as he had his tools and his determination, he knew he'd make it through, one repair at a time. The sky darkened suddenly, heavy clouds rolling in as if nature itself had decided to take a break from the day's monotony. Ethan glanced up from his workbench, just in time to see the first drops of rain splatter against the cracked windshield of an old sedan parked outside. He sighed, knowing the storm would likely bring more trouble than business. People rarely ventured out on days like this unless they absolutely had to, and those who did were usually desperate. Sure enough, not 10 minutes later, the distant rumble of thunder was joined by the unmistakable growl of a motorcycle engine fighting its way through the downpour. Ethan stepped closer to the garage door, squinting into the haze of rain and headlights. The bike sputtered and coughed before coming to an abrupt halt right in front of the entrance. A figure clad head to toe in black leather swung off the seat with an exasperated huff, pulling off their helmet to reveal a cascade of damp, chestnut-brown hair. Ethan froze for a moment, taken aback. The rider wasn't what, or rather, who, he'd expected. It was a woman, her sharp features framed by strands of wet hair clinging to her face. Her piercing green eyes scanned the garage with a mix of frustration and skepticism, as though she'd stumbled upon some forgotten relic instead of a functioning repair shop. She didn't look thrilled to be there, but the way she crossed her arms over her soaked jacket suggested she didn't have much choice. "Looks like you're having a bad day," Ethan said, breaking the silence with a lopsided grin. He grabbed a rag from his pocket and wiped his hands absently, trying to appear casual despite the awkwardness of the situation. "Need a hand?" The woman raised an eyebrow, clearly unimpressed. "It's your job to help, isn't it?" She shot back, her voice clipped and direct. Ethan blinked at her tone but didn't let it faze him. He was used to dealing with grumpy customers. It came with the territory. "Fair enough," he replied lightly, stepping out into the rain without hesitation. "Let me take a look." He approached the motorcycle cautiously, noting how sleek and well-maintained it appeared despite its current state. This wasn't the kind of ride you'd expect to find broken down in a place like Maplewood. Something about it, and about her, felt different. But Ethan pushed those thoughts aside and focused on the task at hand. After a few moments of inspecting the engine, he nodded knowingly. "Fuel line issue," he announced, glancing back at her. "Shouldn't take too long to fix, but you'll need to wait it out here. Unless you've got somewhere else to go." She hesitated, her expression softening ever so slightly. "No," she admitted after a pause. "I don't." Then, almost reluctantly, she added, "Thanks." Ethan chuckled softly. "Don't mention it. Happens to the best of us." As he wheeled the bike inside the garage, he gestured toward a worn-out chair near the corner. "Make yourself comfortable while I get to work. Coffee's over there if you want it, though I can't promise it's anything fancy." She followed his gaze to the tiny coffee maker perched precariously on a cluttered table. For a moment, she looked like she might refuse, but then she shrugged and walked over, peeling off her gloves as she went. Ethan watched her out of the corner of his eye as he began tinkering with the bike. Despite her prickly demeanor, there was something intriguing about her, an air of mystery that didn't quite match the image of a stranded traveler. As the sound of tools clinking against metal filled the space, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that this encounter was more than just another repair job. Sure, he'd helped plenty of people before, but something told him this woman wasn't just passing through. Little did he know, beneath the leather jacket and guarded glances lay secrets that would soon turn his quiet, predictable life upside down. Over the next few weeks, Sophia's visits to Maplewood became more frequent. At first, she told herself it was just to check on her motorcycle. After all, long journeys could be hard on even the best engineered bikes. But deep down, she knew the real reason she kept coming back had nothing to do with the bike, and everything to do with Ethan. Each visit gave her a chance to spend time with him, to learn more about the man who seemed so refreshingly different from anyone she'd ever met. Ethan, for his part, welcomed her company without question. He didn't pry into why she kept returning or what her life was like outside of Maplewood. Instead, he simply enjoyed their conversations, which grew easier and deeper with each meeting. They talked about dreams they'd had as kids, fears that lingered in adulthood, and the little things that brought them joy. For Ethan, it was fixing cars and watching sunsets over the hills. For Sophia, it was moments of quiet solitude. And lately, the warmth of sitting beside him in the garage. One afternoon, as they worked together cleaning up the cluttered space, Sophia decided to test Ethan further. She wanted to see if his kindness was genuine, if he'd still care for her without knowing the truth about her wealth. So when he asked casually about her travels, she crafted a story, one that painted her as someone struggling to make ends meet. "I've been doing odd jobs along the way," she said, avoiding his eyes as she wiped down a dusty shelf. "Painting murals, helping out at cafes, anything to keep moving. It's not easy, but I guess I'm used to it." Ethan paused, looking at her thoughtfully. "You don't have to tell me if you don't want to," he said gently. "But if you're ever in a tight spot, you know I'm here, right? You can stay in the spare room upstairs if you need to. No strings attached." Sophia blinked, caught off guard by his offer. The sincerity in his voice made her chest tighten. Here was a man who had so little himself, yet he was willing to share what he had with someone he barely knew. She forced a small smile, her heart swelling with gratitude. and guilt. "Thanks, Ethan. That means a lot." True to his word, Ethan insisted she take the spare room above the garage during one of her longer stays. He showed her around the modest space, apologizing for its simplicity while Sofia marveled at how cozy it felt. There were no luxuries here, no marble countertops or panoramic windows, but there was something far more valuable: a sense of belonging. During her time there, Ethan began teaching her basic car repairs, patiently guiding her through tasks like changing oil or replacing spark plugs. Sofia soaked up every lesson, finding unexpected delight in the hands-on work. It was humbling, grounding, and completely foreign to her billionaire lifestyle. Yet she cherished every moment, especially the laughter they shared when she accidentally dropped a wrench or got grease on her hands. As days turned into weeks, Sofia found herself torn. On one hand, she loved the simplicity of her time with Ethan, the way he accepted her without expecting anything in return. On the other hand, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was deceiving him. Every lie she told weighed heavier on her conscience, making her wonder if their bond could survive the truth. Late one evening, as they sat on the steps outside the garage sharing a meal, Sofia watched Ethan carefully. His face glowed in the soft light of a nearby lantern, his expression calm and content. She realized then that he wasn't just kind, he was extraordinary. In a world where people chased wealth and status, Ethan valued authenticity, connection, and hard work. And though she hadn't meant to, she'd fallen for him. But love came with risks, and Sofia knew she couldn't hide forever. The question was, would Ethan still see her the same way once he learned who she really was? For now, she pushed the thought aside, focusing instead on the present, the sound of crickets chirping, the cool night air, and the comforting presence of the man beside her. Whatever happened next, she vowed to cherish this moment, because it might never come again. The weeks passed quietly in Maplewood, the storm that had brought Sofia into Ethan's life now a distant memory. Yet for some reason, Ethan couldn't stop thinking about her. It wasn't just her striking appearance, or the way she carried herself with quiet confidence. It was the way she'd seemed so guarded at first, only to soften ever so slightly as they talked. There was something beneath the surface, something she hadn't shared. He didn't dwell on it too much. After all, travelers came and went, and he'd long since learned not to cling to fleeting encounters. Sofia, however, found herself unable to let go of that rainy evening in the garage. Back on the road, cruising along highways and stopping in small towns, she replayed their conversation in her mind. His kindness, his humility, the way he worked with such care and focus, it all stayed with her. She'd met countless people during her travels, but none had left such a lasting impression. Ethan was different. He didn't know who she really was, and yet he treated her with respect and warmth. No questions asked. But there was more to it than that. Sofia had spent years surrounded by people who wanted something from her: money, connections, status. But Ethan didn't seem to want anything at all. That kind of authenticity was rare in her world, almost alien. For the first time in what felt like forever, she wondered if maybe she'd been searching for the wrong things all along. Determined to understand the pull she felt toward him, Sofia made a decision. She would return to Maplewood, not because her bike needed repairs, but because she did. She needed answers, clarity, maybe even a little hope. So one crisp morning, she rode back into town, parking her motorcycle outside Carter's auto repair once again. Ethan looked up from under the hood of a car when he heard the familiar rumble of an engine. At first, he thought he was imagining things, until he saw her walking toward him, helmet tucked under one arm. A slow smile spread across his face. "Well, I didn't think I'd see you again," he said, wiping his hands on a rag. "Everything okay with the bike?" "It's fine," Sofia replied, her tone lighter than before. "Actually, but..." She paused, suddenly unsure of how to explain herself. "I was passing through and figured I'd stop by. Maybe check in." Ethan raised an eyebrow, amused. "Check in? On me or the bike?" "Both," she admitted with a small laugh. I wanted to make sure your garage was still standing." He chuckled, gesturing around the cluttered space. "Still here, still running." "Barely." Their banter flowed easily, as though no time had passed at all. Over the next hour, they fell into conversation, talking about everything and nothing. Ethan shared stories about growing up in Maplewood, while Sophia listened intently, occasionally offering glimpses of her own experiences. Carefully edited, of course. She spoke vaguely about living in big cities, working long hours, and feeling disconnected from the world. Ethan nodded sympathetically, sensing there was more to her story but respecting her boundaries. As the day wore on, Sophia realized she didn't want to leave. When Ethan mentioned needing help organizing some old parts in the garage, she surprised herself by volunteering to stay and assist. Together, they sorted through boxes and tools, laughing at the chaos and finding unexpected joy in the simple task. By the time evening rolled around, the garage felt less like a workspace and more like a sanctuary, a place where two very different people could connect without judgment. That night, as they sat on the steps outside the garage sharing takeout pizza, Sophia felt a sense of peace she hadn't known in years. Ethan's presence was grounding, comforting in a way she hadn't expected. And though she knew she couldn't reveal her true identity just yet, she also knew one thing for certain. This wasn't going to be their last meeting. Whatever was growing between them, friendship, trust, or something deeper, was worth exploring. For Ethan, the visit confirmed what he'd suspected all along. Sophia wasn't just another traveler. There was depth to her, layers waiting to be uncovered. He didn't push, didn't pry. Instead, he simply enjoyed her company, grateful for the unexpected gift of her return. Little did either of them know, their bond was about to grow stronger and test them in ways neither could anticipate. As Ethan worked on the motorcycle, his movements were steady and precise, each tool finding its place with practiced ease. The rain continued to pour outside, creating a soothing rhythm against the tin roof of the garage. Inside, the atmosphere shifted subtly, the initial tension giving way to something quieter, almost companionable. Sophia sat in the corner chair, sipping the surprisingly decent coffee she'd poured for herself. Her earlier irritation seemed to melt away as she observed him work. "You're good at what you do," she said finally, breaking the silence. Her voice was softer now, less guarded than before. Ethan glanced up briefly, a hint of surprise flickering across his face. "Thanks," he replied, wiping his hands on a rag. "It's not rocket science, but it keeps me busy." Sophia tilted her head slightly, studying him. Not many people would have come out in this weather to help a stranger. Most mechanics I know wouldn't bother unless there was money involved. Ethan chuckled, leaning back on his heels for a moment. "Well, not most mechanics. Besides, if I didn't help folks when they needed it, who would? This town doesn't exactly have Uber or Lyft on speed dial." His casual humor caught her off guard, and she found herself smiling faintly. There was something disarming about him, his easygoing nature, the way he spoke without pretense. It was so different from the polished, calculated conversations she was used to having in boardrooms and charity galas. Here was a man who lived simply, worked hard, and seemed genuinely content with his life, even though it wasn't perfect. "What about you?" Ethan asked, snapping her out of her thoughts. "What brings you to a place like Maplewood?" Sophia hesitated, her fingers tightening around the coffee mug. She'd rehearsed vague answers for situations like this, but none of them felt right in that moment. Instead, she settled for a half-truth. "Just traveling. Trying to see more of the world, I guess." "Traveling by yourself?" Ethan raised an eyebrow, clearly intrigued. "That takes guts." She shrugged, though the compliment made her cheeks warm ever so slightly. "Sometimes you need to get away from everything. Clear your head." Ethan nodded thoughtfully, turning his attention back to the bike. "I get that. Sounds lonely, though." The comment lingered between them, heavier than either intended. Sophia looked down at her hands, suddenly aware of how much she'd been craving connection these past few months. Since stepping away from her billionaire lifestyle, she'd met plenty of people, but none of them had truly seen her, not the real her, behind the wealth and fame. Ethan, however, didn't seem interested in any of that. To him, she was just another traveler needing help. Nothing more. After a while, Ethan stood up, brushing off his jeans. "All done," he announced, patting the side of the motorcycle. "Give it a try." Sophia rose from her seat, walking over to the bike. She swung her leg over it and turned the key, holding her breath as the engine roared to life. Relief washed over her features. "It works," she said, looking up at him. "Thank you." "No problem." Ethan grinned, shoving his hands into his pockets. "Safe travels." For a moment, neither of them moved. The storm outside showed no signs of letting up, and the warmth of the garage felt oddly inviting. Sophia hesitated, then reached into her jacket for her wallet. "How much do I owe you?" Ethan waved her off immediately. "Don't worry about it. Just glad I could help." Her brow furrowed in confusion, or maybe admiration. "You sure? I mean, you must need the money." "I don't fix things for money," he said simply, meeting her gaze. "I fix them because it's what I love doing. And besides, you're already soaked enough without adding guilt to the mix." Sophia stared at him, struck by his sincerity. In her world, everyone had an angle, a motive hidden beneath polite smiles and empty words. But Ethan, he was different. He gave without expecting anything in return, and that selflessness left an impression she couldn't shake. As she pulled on her helmet and prepared to leave, she paused, glancing back at him one last time. "Maybe I'll see you around," she said, her tone lighter than before. Ethan shrugged, still smiling. "If you're ever passing through again, I'll be here." With that, she revved the engine and disappeared into the rain, leaving Ethan standing in the doorway, watching until the taillights faded into the distance. He didn't realize it yet, but their paths were far from finished crossing. For now, though, he returned to his work, humming softly as the storm raged on. With the truth finally out in the open, Sophia and Ethan faced a new challenge, navigating their relationship despite the vast differences in their worlds. It wasn't going to be easy. Sophia knew that better than anyone, but she was determined to make it work. For the first time in years, she felt like she had something real, something worth fighting for. Ethan, too, was willing to give it a shot. He didn't care about her money or fame. What mattered to him was the person she was when the world wasn't watching. Still, blending their lives wouldn't be without its hurdles. Sophia introduced Ethan to her glamorous lifestyle cautiously, inviting him to visit her penthouse apartment in the city. At first, he felt completely out of place among the sleek furniture, towering windows, and endless amenities. But Sophia made sure to keep things grounded, showing him the small joys she cherished even in her luxurious surroundings: a quiet corner where she read books, the view of the sunset from her balcony, the simple meals they shared together. In return, Ethan invited Sophia deeper into his world. He took her on long drives through Maplewood's countryside, introduced her to the townsfolk who had become like family to him, and taught her how to fix an old tractor engine. To his delight, Sophia embraced it all with genuine enthusiasm. She laughed as grease smeared across her hands, marveled at the beauty of the rolling hills, and listened intently as Ethan pointed out constellations in the night sky. These moments reminded her of why she'd fallen for him in the first place: his ability to find happiness in the simplest things. Their bond grew stronger with each passing day, but challenges inevitably arose. Paparazzi began lurking around Maplewood after spotting Sophia during one of her visits, eager to uncover the story behind her sudden reappearance in public life. Rumors swirled about her connection to Ethan, painting him as a gold digger or labeling their relationship as a publicity stunt. Neither accusation was true, but the scrutiny weighed heavily on them both. One evening, after a particularly invasive article appeared online, Sophia found Ethan sitting alone in the garage, staring at the floor. "You okay?" she asked softly, kneeling beside him. He sighed, running a hand through his hair. I hate seeing you dragged into this mess because of me. Maybe we should rethink this." Sophia shook her head firmly. "No, this isn't your fault. It's mine. My world is messy, Ethan, but I'm not letting go of us because of it. We'll figure it out together." Her determination bolstered his resolve. They decided to address the rumors head-on, releasing a joint statement that emphasized the authenticity of their relationship. While the media buzz died down eventually, the experience brought them closer, teaching them the importance of standing by each other no matter what. As months passed, their love deepened, becoming a partnership built on mutual respect and understanding. Sophia used her resources to help Ethan expand the garage, turning it into a community hub where locals could learn car repair skills and access affordable services. Ethan, in turn, encouraged Sophia to reconnect with her passions outside of business, supporting her dream of starting a foundation to empower underprivileged youth. Their wedding, held in Mapletown's picturesque park, was a perfect reflection of their journey together. It was modest yet meaningful, attended by close friends, family, and the townsfolk who had come to adore Sophia almost as much as Ethan did. As they exchanged vows beneath a canopy of twinkling lights, surrounded by laughter and tears, it was clear to everyone present that theirs was a love story unlike any other. For Sophia and Ethan, the road ahead wouldn't always be smooth, but they faced it with open hearts and unwavering trust. Together, they proved that love could bridge even the widest gaps, and that true happiness came not from wealth or status, but from finding someone who saw you for exactly who you were. It was a lazy Sunday morning when Ethan found himself flipping through an old magazine at the local diner, waiting for his usual breakfast order. The pages were filled with glossy ads and celebrity gossip, things he rarely paid attention to. But as he absent-mindedly turned one page, something caught his eye. A photograph of a woman who looked eerily familiar. At first, he thought it was just a coincidence, but the longer he stared, the more certain he became. The article featured Sophia Langley, the reclusive billionaire known for her vast business empire and philanthropic efforts. According to the piece, she had mysteriously disappeared from public life months ago, leaving behind rumors of burnout and disillusionment. Ethan's heart skipped a beat as he studied the photo. The sharp features, the piercing green eyes, it was unmistakably her. His mind raced. All this time, he'd thought she was just another traveler, someone living paycheck to paycheck. But now, everything made sense. Her polished demeanor, the sleek motorcycle, even the subtle hints she dropped about city life. She hadn't been exaggerating or embellishing. She'd been downplaying the truth. The realization hit him like a ton of bricks. Ethan didn't know whether to feel betrayed or amused. On one hand, Sophia had lied to him. Not maliciously, perhaps, but still. On the other hand, he couldn't blame her for wanting to escape the pressures of her high-profile life. After all, he'd seen glimpses of her vulnerability during their conversations. He knew she wasn't just a wealthy heiress. She was a person searching for meaning in a chaotic world. When Sophia arrived later that day, Ethan greeted her with a calm smile, though his mind was anything but settled. "Hey," he said casually, handing her a cup of coffee. "How was your ride?" She took the cup, sensing something different in his tone, but unable to pinpoint what it was. "Good," she replied, settling onto the stool beside him. "Quiet roads today." Ethan nodded, hesitating before speaking. "You know, I came across something interesting this morning. A magazine article about, well, you." Sophia froze, her fingers tightening around the mug. For a moment, she didn't say anything, her mind scrambling for words. Finally, she let out a shaky breath. "I wondered how long it would take before you figured it out." "Figured what out?" Ethan asked, leaning back against the workbench. His voice was gentle, but there was a hint of curiosity beneath the surface. "That you're not just a struggling artist traveling the country. That you're actually Sophia Langley, billionaire extraordinaire." She winced at the word extraordinaire, but nodded slowly. "Yes, that's me." Ethan crossed his arms, studying her carefully. Why didn't you tell me sooner? Did you think I wouldn't understand? It's not that, Sophia said quickly, shaking her head. I just needed a break from everything. The money, the fame, the expectations. I wanted to meet people who saw me for who I am, not for what I own. And did you? Ethan asked softly. See yourself clearly, I mean. Sophia looked away, her gaze drifting toward the rain-soaked window. I think so. Being here with you, it's shown me things I didn't realize I was missing. Simplicity, kindness, connection. She turned back to him, her eyes searching his face. I'm sorry I didn't tell you the truth earlier. I was scared. If you knew who I really was, you might treat me differently. Ethan considered this for a moment, then gave a small shrug. Maybe I would have, or maybe not, but keeping secrets doesn't exactly build trust, does it? You're right, she admitted, her voice tinged with regret. I should have trusted you enough to be honest. Can you forgive me? He smiled faintly, the tension easing from his shoulders. I can try, but only if you promise to stop hiding, from me and from yourself. Sophia nodded, relief washing over her. I promise. For the first time since discovering her secret, Ethan felt a glimmer of hope. Yes, she'd deceived him, but he understood why. More importantly, he realized that the woman standing before him, the one who laughed at his jokes, helped clean the garage, and shared late-night talks, wasn't defined by her wealth. She was real, flawed, and human. And that was what mattered most. As they stood together in the quiet garage, surrounded by tools and half-finished projects, Ethan reached out and squeezed her shoulder. Welcome back, Sophia, he said simply. No more lies, okay? No more lies, she agreed, smiling despite the tears brimming in her eyes. In that moment, the distance between them began to close. Not entirely, but enough to remind them both that love, no matter how complicated, was worth fighting for.